NASCAR says they're close to striking a deal with the race teams. The race teams disagree. And is this weekend at Talladega a must-win for Ford? How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. We are now 2 months into the NASCAR season, and there is still no new charter agreement on the horizon. The current deal expires at the end of 2024, so the clock is ticking. NASCAR's Chief Operating Officer Steve O'Donnell addressed these ongoing negotiations this week in a report from Adam Stern in the Sports Business Journal. O'Donnell said, quote, "We're very close," end quote, to reaching an agreement with the teams. Sports Business Journal then reported that 3 sources familiar with the teams disagree with O'Donnell. They do not believe an agreement is very close. That report backs up what Jimmy Johnson said at Texas Motor Speedway this past weekend. Matt Weaver for Sportsnaut compiled some good Jimmy quotes, including, quote, "I think it's going to come down to deep in the year when everybody has to. And right now, it is still posturing. The clock is ticking, but if you look and see how much time is left, we are just getting into the 8th, maybe 9th inning of what really needs to happen in negotiating for all parties." Still posturing. Look, high-level sense, the teams want a larger slice of the media revenue, and they want the charter system to become permanent. NASCAR reportedly is open to increasing their share of the media revenue, although maybe not by quite as much as the teams would like. But NASCAR CEO Jim France has not been receptive to the idea of making the charter system permanent. NASCAR is open to extending the current charter agreement for another 7 years to match the media rights deal, but making charters permanent, so far Jim France says no way. At this point, I wonder which side has more leverage. Obviously, both sides need each other to some degree, but it seems every time someone from the teams opens their mouth, they've got something critical to say about the situation, like Denny Hamlin recently asking Jim France if he's going to let the sport get stuck in the mud, or Jimmy Johnson saying right here that both sides are kind of posturing. Those 3 sources to Sports Business Journal disagreeing with NASCAR's statement that they're close to a deal. Everyone's kind of critical on this side, using the media perhaps to their advantage to get their message across. However, whenever NASCAR opens their mouth, it's always, yeah, everything is fine. We're close to getting a deal done. The difference in tone, the difference in messaging, it just has me wonder, who has the most power here? In my head, I think it's NASCAR, just because they control so many important racetracks like Daytona International Speedway. They're the ones who negotiated the multi-billion-dollar TV agreement. They have 76 years of brand recognition behind them. And we just saw with Tony Stewart's SRX that it's very hard to build sort of a rival oval racing series and be successful. So I do feel like NASCAR holds more of the power here for sure, but they do still need the teams. Again, both sides do need each other. Even if NASCAR was to just pull some random teams and drivers off the street and run a race, viewership would crater if they don't have the recognizable stars and teams and cars that we're used to. I get why Jim France doesn't want to make the charter system permanent. It would give the teams collectively more power. They would have a larger seat at the table. NASCAR, just like about any business in this situation, wants to keep as much control for themselves as possible. This situation is so interesting, however, because I feel like we're past the point of no return. I don't see the charter system ever going away, at least not anytime soon. So much money has already changed hands between the teams. NASCAR can't celebrate the growing value of charters and then simultaneously threaten to potentially take them away. I don't know. I'm sure I'm oversimplifying things here. It's complicated. Both sides do need each other. I don't know if the teams are asking for too much. Maybe NASCAR is being a little too stingy. It's really hard to tell from the outside. I think Jimmy Johnson is exactly right. Both sides are posturing right now, puffing out their chest, putting on a brave, confident face. It sounds like some very important meetings are coming up between the two sides in the coming weeks. Hopefully, we start to get closer to a real compromise. I want to read one more quote from Steve O'Donnell. Again, this was in the Sports Business Journal report. I'll link the full article down in the description below. O'Donnell said, quote, "The great news on our end, too, I've been at NASCAR a long time, and ownership in NASCAR was always traditional, grew up through the sport, had been an owner for 30 years. That is completely changing, and you're seeing interest from all over to come into NASCAR. So it's a big opportunity for us. We've got to get that right. We're going to have new personalities, new businesses that'll come into the sport. So I think at the end of the day, we've talked about everybody will be a little ticked off once we get to the deal, but that'll mean it's the right way to go. Interesting comments there from O'Donnell. What he's talking about is NASCAR obviously has its legacy teams, if you will. Hendrick Motorsports, who've been around for 40 years. Richard Childress Racing, Joe Gibbs Racing, Roger Penske owns a team. But in recent years, we've seen Justin Marks start up Trackhouse. Michael Jordan has brought his business partners in to start up 2311. You're going to see larger groups and businesses get more involved. The Fenway Group has been invested in Roush for more than a decade. But now there's new groups moving in. I don't know if Gainbridge officially has an ownership stake in Spire, but it wouldn't surprise me. Joe Gibbs sold off part of his race team to the Harris Blitzer Entertainment Group last year. I think Steve O'Donnell is exactly right. That trend is going to continue. The way I see it, and granted, I'm not a seasoned businessman by any means, but I think there are some pros and cons to this. The pros are obvious. More business owners, more investment means more money, potentially more race teams. All the talk about Honda potentially joining could be another manufacturer, more competition. That's all very good, but a potential con I could see, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, what happens if the sport hits another sharp downturn or the economy hits a sharp downturn? Guys like Roger Penske, Richard Childress have such a passion for racing. I mean, Jeff Gordon admitted that Hendrick Motorsports hasn't been profitable in a decade. Yet they're still here, and Rick Hendrick is as emotionally invested as ever. The B2B component of owning a race team will likely only get stronger, so that may keep some of these new ownership groups around longer. But that is one thing I worry about. A lot of the current owners in the NASCAR Cup Series are racers first. With these corporate groups coming in, could we lose some of that passion, some of that soul? NASCAR's always been a business, even owning a team. It's all about making the dollars and cents work. But the harsh business side of the sport could become even more obvious in the years to come. So that's just a small concern I have. Again, maybe reading too much into it. Again, more money, more investment, more competition, good for the sport. It's hard to argue against that. But it's nice to hear that Steve O'Donnell and NASCAR see this trend, and they're, I guess, trying to either prepare or address it head on. I know it's a complicated issue, and much of the industry is kind of in the dark right now as these slow negotiations continue, but it is interesting to talk about whenever we do get some new quotes and a new report like this one. Moving on, let's talk about Ford. A few weeks ago, we reacted to a clip from Joey Logano on his SiriusXM show where he admitted that the Fords were a bit off at the time. Ever since those comments, Joey Logano has finished 11th, 2nd, 6th, and 11th. He's looked pretty good. This week during his SiriusXM NASCAR radio show, Joey Logano said that he passed more cars at Texas than he has at any other big track all season.
I passed 15 cars this week. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, especially where we started and all that, but boy, I haven't passed a car in a mile and a half in a while. That's a good sign when you can do things like that. So We're making progress.
Those words are very encouraging if you're a Ford fan. Joey Logano is still 15th in points, but we are starting to see more Ford drivers creep towards that top 10. Chase Briscoe for Stewart-Haas is now 12th. Chris Buescher is 13th. Logano, Keselowski are right there around the playoff bubble. Ryan Blaney, 7th, is the only Ford, though, still in the top 10. Slowly but surely, it seems that Ford teams are beginning to make progress here the first quarter of the season. Kevin Harvick on his podcast, the Happy Hour Harvick podcast, Harvick's Happy Hour podcast, he said that this weekend at Talladega is a must-win for Ford. If they don't win this weekend, it's a failure.
If a Ford does not win this weekend, it is an absolute failure. A Ford has to win the race this weekend to stop the bleeding. This is where we think they should win. And I think that they know that this might be the only place that they can win.
I agree with Kevin Harvick that this is a huge weekend for Ford. They're typically great at the super speedways. I don't know if I agree that this is a must win. It's a big opportunity, if for no other reason than it'll give them some confidence that they desperately need. Again, the super speedways may be their best type of track, but we've seen Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, Brad Keselowski, Chris Buescher finish inside the top 5 at a variety of tracks this year. They may not be the favorites anywhere else, but they very well could win just about any week. And hearing Joey Logano in that first clip say that, hey, they've made some progress, they feel, that's very encouraging. Remember, Ford has an all-new car. They're supposed to be a little behind at the start of this year. That's not surprising. I think the only reason people are getting impatient is because Toyota also has a new car and they fired off hot to start the year. They dominated Phoenix, Bristol, that got everyone's attention and shifted a lot of the negative focus to Ford. That doesn't mean, though, that Ford is necessarily behind schedule. It just means Toyota is maybe ahead of schedule. A win this weekend is extremely important, but even if they come up short, because Talladega can be tough to predict, it's encouraging to hear Logano talk about the strides that his team at least have made in just these few short weeks. Logano and Blaney, Ford drivers, are the two defending champions. In both cases, they came on strong late in the year. It's not always about how you start, it's how you finish. So big weekend for Ford, no doubt, huge opportunity, build some confidence, but is it a must win? Is this the only place they could win between now and the end of the regular season? No, I wholly disagree with that. But it makes for some good drama. It's going to be fun to watch this weekend. My pick to win is Ryan Blaney. He's finished first and second the last 2 Talladega trips. He'll be in the mix. Hopefully he avoids the big crashes. Let me know what you expect to see at Talladega this weekend. Do you agree with Harvick that Fords can really only win at super speedways right now? How important is this weekend for the Blue Ovals? Let me know down in the comment section below. While you're down there, leave a like on this video, helps me out a ton. Also hit that subscribe button if you love NASCAR. Stay in the loop on all the latest news, rumors, race recaps, and more. And as always, a huge thank you to my very generous Patreon supporters. Later this afternoon, I believe, I will be on the Kenny Wallace Show here on YouTube. Kind of a surreal experience, so I encourage you to go check that out. Check out Kenny's channel. I'm just now getting used to interviewing drivers. I'm not used to having a driver interview me. So hopefully you learned something. Hopefully it's interesting. Be sure to check that out. Huge shout out to Kenny for having me on. It was an honor. I will see you all again on this channel very, very soon. Have a wonderful rest of your Thursday, folks.